I wanted to first ask you why you decided to run.
Well, the reason I decided to run for this office this year is to restore fair elections. You know, each year citizens just like you and I have the opportunity to file a citizens initiative. And once we do that, if enough signatures are reached, that will appear on the ballot. Well, the Secretary of State has a very important duty. That's to write the 100-word ballot title that when we go to vote, we actually read so we know what the initiative is about. Well, twice this year, for the first time in our state's history, it never happened. Our Secretary of State was overturned twice for writing insufficient and unfair ballot language. Two different judges, two different courts. And in Missouri, they defined insufficient and unfair to mean that it was written with prejudice, bias, deception, and or showing favoritism. You know, the Secretary of State is the chief election officer in the state of Missouri. There's absolutely no room in that office for prejudice, bias, deception, or favoritism. So that's why I'm running. My pledge is to you and to all Missourians that when I'm elected, I'll write sufficient and fair ballot language every time, regardless of the issue.
All right, let's talk a little bit about you now, your background. Tell me about your job, where you grew up, your family, anything that pertains to information about you.
Okay, well, I graduated from Marshall High School. From Marshall High School, I went to Central Missouri State University, which is now University of Central Missouri, where I received a degree in education. I was certified to teach grades 7 through 12 in social studies. While at CMSU, I met my wife, Denise. We were married my last year of college. We've been married for, it'll be 15 years this year. We have 7 children, 4 boys and 3 girls, aged 13 to 1 year old. So nice big family. After graduating from Central Missouri State University, I went to work for the Division of Youth Services, where I worked for a little over a year. After that, I went back to college, received my Juris Doctor degree from the University of Missouri, Kansas City. And then from there, I worked for the Division of Youth Services, the Department of Corrections. And I have 2 years of business management experience as well.
All right, let's get into some of the issues regarding this campaign. What do you see as the biggest challenge facing the next Secretary of State?
Well, I think right now, the big issue as far as this race is fair ballot language. But for the next Secretary of State, I think the biggest issue is voter fraud. And that's the difference where my opponent and I disagree on. My opponent basically says that there's not a major issue, but there really is. You know, so I support the common sense photo ID law, where in order to vote, you show a photo ID. Now it could be a driver's license or a non-driver license, state-issued ID. And we can make sure that every single voter has that, because the law already requires that state agencies that deal with disability or state agencies that provide public assistance, that they help register voters. So it would be those agencies that resources could be given to make sure that every voter that couldn't afford an ID could receive one. And a bigger problem is fraud through absentee balloting. You know, absentee balloting is a very important aspect of our voting system, so if you can't be there on election day, you can vote that way. But when you have groups like ACORN who go throughout the country and register voters, and it seems like almost every city they go into, there's a problem with election fraud. Maybe 1,000 or 1,500 voter registration cards they turn in that are questionable. Sometimes they have registered dead people. Other times they have registered people who are eligible to vote, but they put down the wrong address. So this creates a situation where somebody could take that information and vote for you and disenfranchise your vote because the wrong address was put down, so somebody could vote in another precinct, either absentee or in person. Because right now there's not a photo ID requirement, so you could vote for somebody else as long as you had the card from the county clerk's office.
Along with the photo ID, which you're asking for, or is one of your things that you want to do, what else can you do to prevent voter fraud?
Well, work with the legislature to pass legislation to solve some of the problems with ACORN and groups that are committing voter fraud, such as making sure that when they collect when those signatures are collected, that they're turned in as they're being collected, as opposed to what happens a lot of times is ACORN or other groups will collect through a city for months, and then at the last minute they'll turn in hundreds or thousands of voter registration cards. Well, that creates a huge problem for the county clerks, who have a very difficult time processing that many in the last minutes. So they may not be able to verify that all of those voters are actually eligible to vote, or actually it's an accurate address in the time frame they have. So just making sure that they do that over time, and making sure that when people are voting, that it's actually the person voting. The photo IDs will help with that.
All right, if you are elected to the position, is there, and you've talked about it with the voter fraud a little bit, but are there other issues that you want to change when you are elected to that position?
Well, as I've told everyone, my focus in that office will be restoring fair elections and eliminating voter fraud, and making sure that our county clerk's working with them hand in hand to make sure that we have the best system possible. But in addition to that, I want to make sure that we can streamline, and this has been happening through the last two administrations, but make sure we can streamline the process for businesses who are filing in order to form a corporation or an LLC, to make sure it's as easy as possible for them, reach out to business owners, and see how we can improve our services to them. Also, one thing I'd like to do is make sure that small businesses particularly, but all businesses in Missouri, can link to the website, the Secretary of State's website. So if you want to go buy a product that's made in Missouri, and instead of going online and finding something that's maybe made in another state or in another country and purchasing it, you can see where things are being manufactured right here in the state on that website, and purchase local products to support our local economy and our small businesses. So that's one thing I'd like to do. As far as our state library systems, I think that's an area where things are being done fine as they are. But what I'd like to focus on is reaching out to our youth and our young adults through the state library system, so that they can really truly understand our American history, promoting American history, and also helping them to understand national sovereignty. Because a lot of times I think the understanding of national sovereignty doesn't come through traditional high school history classes, and sometimes not even the college classes. Basically understanding how signing a treaty can affect our ability to make decisions in the future, and actually affect our sovereignty, because when you sign a treaty, that trumps our Constitution. So they need to understand that, so that when they get into leadership roles or when they're voting, they can truly make the right decisions. Because sometimes it sounds good, well, that's a treaty we would support, but when you understand that it would give the World Court or the United Nations the ability to sanction our nation, or to control our ability to operate or drill for oil in the oceans, like with the Law of the Sea Treaty, it'll give the United Nations control over a lot of the oceans that we have sovereign rights in today. Those things come into play and would help those young adults and adults really understand and grasp the issues better. So I'd like to promote that through books and through classes and things at libraries, and also at the Secretary of State's office.